challenges, and best practices. So, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Stella and invite her to speak to us.
Hi, everyone. Good morning from me, and probably good afternoon and evenings from some of you around the world. Thank you, Nigel, for such a warm introduction. I'm just going to jump in because we have a lot to pack in today and we don't have too much time. So artificial intelligence. So the first thing I actually, before I even start my presentation, is to ask you guys, when you hear the term AI, what comes to your mind? Like, what's the first thing? Without thinking, just please type in to share your idea, and I just want to get a sense. So
okay, so there's a big box. If you could just type in the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, I love it. Smart, Siri, robot, failure, iRobot, excitement, algorithm, game, machine learning. Oh, wow. Range, algorithm, automation, bot.
Artificial insemination. That's an interesting one, David.
That's funny. Science fiction, electronic, lots of data. Okay, Will Smith. Wow, I have never seen that before.
Jerry, retirement. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
Star Trek. Okay, that's good stuff.
Right, we go back to the presentation.
So I think this is good. As you see, I just want to give you a flavor of when we talk about AI and the challenge within this field is there's no single agreed upon definition, and not within this group and not within the field at large. In fact, AI means many different things to many different people. Okay. And the debate around AI actually it merits its own study, but we're just going to define it today. Just very simply, is that AI is a simulation of human intelligence processed by machines. So the key word here is a simulation of human intelligence. We're not saying it's the the exact replica. It's not the same as human intelligence, but what it appears to be. Human intelligence, intelligence such as our ability to recognize faces, our ability to pick up languages and translate that. So these are human abilities that machine can simulate. Okay, it is a computer science discipline. It's not new. It's been around for over 60 years. In general. There are two types, actually there's three types, but the broad categories are the general AI and narrow AI. Narrow AI is also known as weak AI. It is the most limited, but is the most common type. It refers to any system that has an ability to perform a very specific task, a niche task, or a limited range of tasks that would require the intelligence of human beings. And a machine can perform that really well, and in some ways even exceeding human capability. Okay, and this is where we see most of the applications today. It falls under the category of narrow AI, able to recognize faces, able to translate, able to recommend a book for you. So there's or able to play chess. These are very specific tasks. And the other end of the spectrum, we get general AI, also known, sometimes you might hear the word strong AI, same thing. And it refers to the machine with a broad cognitive abilities, able to think, able to at least simulate it convincingly with all the intellectual and capabilities of a human being, and potentially surpasses, right? Essentially, the idea is that this kind of general AI intelligence is not like we can't differentiate between an AI and a human being. But that's not going to happen for a very, very long time. So most of the current applications we see are under narrow AI. So having having said that, I like to do a little exercise with you guys, just to see if you think each of these application is it AI or not AI. Nigel, do you mind bringing that up for
Okay,
us?
there's the first
Please?
one, which is Facebook.
Okay, so yeah, that's right. So for those of us that use Facebook, like there's facial recognition. When you upload a photo, you'll see, your friends, and it will automatically say, "Is this your friend so and so? Is this Nigel's face?" and or not. So do you think that's AI? Okay. It's still coming in. What do you think, Nigel?
Yes,
Why?
because it's using
Why is
algorithms to classify faces into numbers and matching numbers. So therefore, that requires pattern
yeah.
recognition essentially, which is AI. It's not unbelievably sophisticated AI, but it is AI, I think. You can disagree.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm going to be
that's
humiliated. I'm going to be
no, no, no.
humiliated now.
No, 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 no. And I'm very pleasantly surprised. So many interesting discussions coming
Yeah.
through. So people say, yeah, that's narrow AI. It's supervised learning. Yep, it's all true. It is because we don't have to explicitly tell Facebook about this is my friend, right? It automatically calculated that and push it to you to say this looks like your mom. This looks like your friend Donald. It's an automatic algorithm that push it to you. So yes, it is AI. So that's good. Anything when Facebook first started, it was people that did the task. Now it's narrow AI. That's right. So the takeaway also is that these things evolved over time, right? Like it started with a manual task of people labeling their faces. And then over time, the machine learned that these faces, and it will automatically label them for you. So, okay, that's great. So I have two more questions
Which
for you
one?
guys. So are you guys
Netflix?
ready? Yes, let's go for that one.
Okay.
Okay, so Netflix, for those of you that use Netflix, it recommend movies. Is that AI? Based on, like you log in and will tell you these are something that you like. Okay, yes, okay. Yeah, definitely. Based on movie categories, learn from your previous choices. Very, very good. Based on browsing history, that's right. This is a recommendation systems. Yeah, based on all are true. While we don't know what kind of assumptions it take from us, but we all understand it's based on some sort of information about you, right? Either it's your history browsing, looking at different movies, or based on the categories that that you chose, or based on popularity of movies, it would recommend movies to you. I would argue that it doesn't work really well, at least for me, but I don't know about you guys. But it definitely is AI. So yeah, algorithm for similar actors. That's right. Resume and start from the beginning functionality. That is not AI, but it is a function in Netflix. So my point to you is sometimes it's difficult to know whether it is or it isn't. But in this case, for the recommendation part of it, it is AI. So could you let's do a final one.
One more. Here we go.
Just to see. Yeah. Okay. Right. So a lot of times we use robotic arms in factory warehouses where it help move boxes and it to move along the product aisles. Is it now or is it maybe? Okay. Interesting. Uh-huh. Yeah, somebody say I guess that would depend if if it's computer vision or glorified vending machine. Very good point. Sorry, if I'm looking away, my bigger screen is on my right. I'm not looking away from you guys. I'm just looking at a bigger screen here. Program reaction to intrusion. Yeah, it depends on the robotic arm function. That's right. It's a maybe because like it depending on if it's using computer vision to identify objects. Traditionally in robotics, there weren't a lot of AI being incorporated. So it's more just a straight programming of like you move this box into this IO kind of straight programming. But over time, that has evolved. It incorporated more AI into the capability of robotic arms. I showed this one in because I want you guys to think it through. Sometimes it's not clear if a certain product is using AI or not. And you have to ask more questions, which is what you guys are doing to say it depends. Does it use this? Does it use that? Yeah, exactly. So great contributions here and great discussion. So I think we can move on.
I'll just give the results. Gabor asked 15.9% yes, it is AI, 46% saying no, it's not, and then closely behind 38.4% saying maybe. So let's go back to the presentation.
Yeah, and this is all correct. That there's no definitely yes, definitely no, or definitely or is it maybe. So I hope that was fun, and so my point to you on these exercise is to understand that the very definition of AI is highly dependent on a specific application and the context. Okay, and that is constantly evolving. What we once considered AI before, it has already advanced to the point that that is not AI. That's not what we call AI anymore. So the threshold keeps moving. So having said that, I really would like to talk a little bit more about the key topic today is some of the L&D applications and examples. I just want to highlight a couple of them because we don't have that much time to go through every one of them. The first one I want to talk about is chatbots. Now, I think a lot of us have interaction with chatbots just through other consumer experiences. Perhaps if you are looking for shopping for clothes or shoes or household products, some of the sites will have a chatbot to come and say, are you looking for this? Do you need help? So in our consumer experience, we come across chatbots. But how does that help with L&D? How does it help with learning? I've seen a lot of applications with chatbots for coaching and for knowledge management. And feel free to share if this is your experience as well, and if you have any experience using chatbots for that. This is nothing new. It's been going on for many years. Back in the days, we hand-coded pattern matching mechanisms to say, oh, I think people is going to most likely ask these questions, so we hand-coded answers in. But nowadays, it's gotten a lot more sophisticated. Obviously, with machine learning and AI, you're able to have chatbots that are more contextually aware and able to learn your conversation as it moved along. So, and also the ability to speak naturally if you're using a voice interface like Google Homes for any of the voice interface technology to pick up some contextual information. It's some interesting comments here. We created chatbot to approach employees individually to do simple needs analysis. That's right. So in L&D, some of the application I'm sharing the screen with you is a program called OB. OB is a chatbot that can help you with onboarding experiences by pushing content out, sourcing it from perhaps Google Drive, sourcing it from your intranet, sourcing it from Dropbox, and looking at content and pushing it out accordingly to an individual's needs. Sorry, I'm just trying to look at some of the conversations.
There was one about the Turing machine. Is that a definition of a successful Turing test? If you can't tell that chatbot is a machine, is that crude?
That is no, I think it's the classic test, right? I mean, for those of you that don't know what a Turing test is, it is a test devised by Alan Turing, a British computer scientist and mathematician, to say if you pass a Turing test, that means you can, if you're having a conversation, like say on text, and you can't tell if this is a person or a robot, that means the robot has passed the Turing test. Yeah, I think it still holds true. I mean, it's debatable because there are places that claim a certain machine or robots have passed the Turing test, and some would argue, oh no, that is very superficial. So I think it's still valid, but obviously as we develop the technologies, that definition needs to be updated as well. So in terms of chatbots, the good applications that I've seen in L&D are using for coaching and mentoring, especially for the first level kind of Q&A questions, and to take away time from a human to reply repetitive questions. This is not by any means to replace human, but to say if we have some, frequently asked questions that, people just constantly need reminding or need asking, this is a good way of pushing that information, or some sensitive information that people don't feel comfortable asking. It's also a good way of using that for sharing knowledge. Now, while this could be done manually, it's very time consuming to program. So AI comes in handy when you can use an AI algorithm to start looking at what's the relevant content to push out and to combine in a different way for different learners. So this is, and it's, so there's an interesting question, say if learning is becoming more community-based and social in nature, is AI being used only for person of information connection, or is it used for network personal knowledge transfer? I think it would be, both. So anyway, so these are all good questions. Please keep coming in, and I'm apologizing in advance if I can't catch your questions.
Stella, can I?
I'm sure.
Carol Ann said, "Did you say there was a third type of AI? Can we just clarify that before we move on? Did you just say 2 types, or were there 3 types of AI?"
Yeah, there is actually a third type. It's called super AI. Super AI is actually kind of bordering science fiction. So you get your narrow, you got your general, and super is everything that we are afraid of in science fiction movie, like AI that have its own consciousness. It's able to make decisions on their own. That's the super AI. So that's the 3 types.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful. And there's just one other outstanding question from Somath, who said, how do you think AI is important in digital learning? Is there a simple answer to that, or do you want to bring that up at the end?
Yeah, I think I'm going to address that under promises and challenges at the end. So let me get to a couple other examples, and we can talk about why is AI important for digital learning.
Great, thank you very much.
Just bear with me. Yeah. So the next applications for AI in learning is recommendation systems. Like we looked at before, Netflix is a recommendation system. I'm not saying recommendation systems in learning is like Netflix, but it's based on a very, it's based on the same technology underneath, okay? You might use LinkedIn Learning. You might use other systems called Learning Experience Platform, LXPs. These are content curation systems whereby you source content either internally or externally, perhaps looking at free and open resources available elsewhere. Perhaps you look at journal articles available from different publications, and you curate this content just like a museum would, looking at curating paintings from around the world. A recommendation system would take that step from curating content based on, say, your personal preferences, abilities, certain attributes, perhaps based on your geographic location, and then recommend content that are relevant to you based on those specific attributes. Just like Netflix would recommend content to you based on your past history of browsing the system, or based on if you watched 5 movies by Tom Cruise, then the actor is the common attribute, right? So then it would source more movies that have Tom Cruise in it. So we have to make some assumptions about what these attributes are in order to make recommendations to you. So that's a recommendation system in learning, okay? And to take one step further from there is you will have the adaptive or personalized learning systems. That is based on the recommendations or based on your consumptions or your interaction of the content or the time that you spend on the content, depending on how each platform measures that. It would then adapt or change or give you a different type of content, or it could give you a different type of how the content is sequenced to you, or give you a different type of assessment. So in adaptive learning, you can adapt the sequence of the content. You can adapt the content itself. As the case here, you can see based on your reply of do you know this content? I know it, I got it now, not sure. Depending on your reply, then the next content that's being presented to you, perhaps it's a little bit more difficult, or maybe a little bit back to the more foundational knowledge if you think you have trouble understanding this piece of content. So that's adaptive and personalized content in a nutshell, based on your interaction, based on perhaps test scores, based on other inputs. So any other comments or questions?
Where would you where would you see this? So Chloe has said, I use it.
Oh, I think I lost you for a second. Okay, I cannot hear Nigel, but I think he... Okay, wait, you're back.
No, this is Don. I just sound a bit like Nigel.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Nigel's frozen. So I tell you what, he was in the middle of asking a question from Chloe, but I think we'll just press on with where we are and keep going.
Okay, and so so Chloe says something about exactly why I employ it for engagement patterns and learner behavior.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's correct.
She's also
and here's where
but we can't answer that question, I'm afraid. So we're going to pass it back.
Here he is.
We can get Nigel
He's
back.
here.
There we go.
I'm here.
Hi, welcome back. So let's move on to the discussion part of it, which is promises and challenges, because I think somebody asked a question about, well, how is AI used with digital learning? What are some good, what are some good things about it? What are some promises? So there are many discussion points in that. Here are a few that we can think about and dig a little bit deeper. First of all, like with chatbots, with recommendation systems, with adaptive learning, what's interesting and what's useful about it is you can use it to source a variety of content. Again, human can do that manually, but it's very time consuming. It's very labor intensive to scale things up. So with AI, you can scale up the sourcing of content. Okay. And with that, it would potentially giving you some way to personalize your learning, especially in a larger organizations whereby you don't have the capacity to answer questions to everyone. Using chatbot is a good way to at least get more the first level questions answer to people quickly. Or if you have a lot of content you wanted to push out and to people with different learning levels, this is a good way of saying, assessing what the baseline is and pushing content out with people that are starting learning at the different levels. Perhaps some people don't need to know the fundamentals because they already knew it. So with adaptive learning, it can help you assess learners and give them content that's not all the same. And with that, it will also help us gain insights. There's a growing field called learning analytics, and this is also connected to AI, is how you can look at, based on the interaction with these systems, to gain insights on perhaps people are doing well with certain type of assessment if you give them more hints, or if the assessment or if the content provide you more support on the fundamental knowledge when you're not understanding the content correctly, or to gain insights on the type of resources you push out. Perhaps people are consuming more videos when you're recommending videos and not so much on podcasts. So it would help you also think about allocation of resources within L&D. And finally, with all of that, it would help identify like where you can increase more learning supports. So yeah, what about, Joe asked about, what about biases? Would that not then impact the inclusive aspect of learning content? Could AI eliminate biases? Very timely questions here, because this is where I want to talk about some of the challenges, right? One of the biggest issue with L&D, with organization, is that we just don't, well, first of all, we don't always have data. And even when we have data, we don't have enough data, especially when we are making recommendations, when we're making, when we're adapting content, we need to have a lot of data. We need to have a lot of content to make it useful, to make it interesting. If I don't know about where you are at, but if you are using Netflix, or Amazon has recommendation system for book purchase as well. What makes it interesting is you have to have a lot of movies or a lot of books to make recommendation interesting. Because if you don't have that many books or you don't have that many movies, you're always giving you the same thing, right? Which could be the case with some of the recommendation system, is that you don't have enough, or you don't have enough fresh content. It actually, it's off-putting by just pushing the same thing out to me all the time. So that's a challenge. And it also could be inaccurate, because if you don't have enough content or data, then we're just pushing out the next best thing to you. So then you also think that the machine is not accurately predicting your needs or anticipating your needs. The second one, have you guys heard of algorithm Blackbox? Is that a familiar term to you?
There's a question about it, saying the black box is where all the biases are, because human beings are putting stuff in there. So there's been a few questions on the ethical and bias issues around algorithms.
I can talk about this all day long. It is a huge issue. For those of you that don't know what that is, black box algorithm refer to like a general inability to look inside these algorithms and see how it arrives at a decision. For example, when we say Netflix recommend movies to you, how do you know what decisions or what assumptions they're making about us, right? Does it make assumptions based on the type of the genre of movies that I like? Does it make assumptions about the fact that I am in Canada? Does it make assumptions about that I'm female? Does it make it so that, maybe I get certain types of movie? I don't know, because the system is not open for me to examine. And more importantly, is not open for me as a user to push back to say, well, hang on a minute, you got this wrong about me. And it's the same with a lot of the learning platforms that are making recommendations, that are making predictions, that are adapting. I don't know what I missed out on. A lot of times, I only see what the outcomes are, right, of what's being recommended to me. But it doesn't allow for a user to push back or to say, yay, this is good, you're spot on, or like, no, I actually, this is not what I wanted to know more of. And if you're a novice learner, you don't even know how to push back. You don't even know that you're getting, like, the machine is getting that algorithm wrong. So it's a huge, huge problem. And also, it's very difficult to predict, like, what, like, learning is so nuanced and it's so complex. Sometimes these kind of recommendations or these adaptation becomes too prescriptive, if you will. It runs the risk of putting you in a box.
Just interrupt a second, sorry. Amelia has said, are we concerned about filter bubbles in the filter bubble of learning, i.e. if we're concerned about filter bubbles in social media? And that's replied by P. Fenwick says, corporate content curation, i.e. can we corporately control what people can see so that we sort of direct their learning in a slightly malevolent way? Is that possible?
Yes, it is possible that it does take a deliberate effort. So when you talk about bubbles, I think you're talking about the echo chamber effect, isn't it? The reality is, if you in social media you like certain content, or you reply to certain content, or you click on certain content, it tells the algorithm that that's the content that you want more of. It makes the assumption based on your interaction, right? And so it just pushed out more of the same content. So if you your political view is more left-leaning, it will push out more content of political view that is similar to yours. So over time, you're under the impression of this world is all left-leaning, similar to you, and not aware that there are other political views out there. And I think that's what people are saying about the echo chamber effect. So it could be true with learning as well. Like, if you like a certain content, or if you like certain way of consuming content, for example, if you like watching videos all the time, then perhaps the system is like, oh, she likes watching videos, let's push out more videos to you. But that's not what learning is about, right? Like, you don't always feed it to your learners just because they like it. You have to push them too. You have to challenge them. You have to say, okay, you know what? Like, this is good. You watch enough. You have to try it out. You have to apply that. You have to, you have to learn, in a more holistic way. So there's the tension there as well. But very good. Yeah, that's a very good point. And finally, as we all understand and are really well aware of the surveillance and privacy issue, if they're collecting data about us, if they're making assumptions about us, are we aware of, like, that, the fact that they're collecting data, the fact that they're making assumptions, the fact that these platforms are, measuring the way we are learning, but not giving us, any feedback on, oh, we think you need more content because you're struggling with this learning, but maybe you're not. Maybe you just don't have time, and maybe you want to do everything last minute. So that's also very, very dangerous. And I think it's more problematic now because there's not any regulations or any standards or any policies to guide organization on, well, these AI products have a, it's bridging people's privacy. it gives some surveillance. Facial recognition is hugely controversial because of that. There's also biometric AI applications for learning of tracking your pulses and your sweat and your facial reaction to learning. So that's a huge privacy breach issue as well. So these are some of the challenges. And I am sure there's many more discussion points on that, but I just wanted to...
Thank you. We're about 10 minutes from the end, Stella.
Yeah, so I am basically wrapping this up by leaving you with some critical questions to ask. If you do want to engage with AI vendors or you're interested in using AI in L&D, so some questions to ask is if you're looking at or interested in an AI platform or product, the first question is it really AI? This is getting back to our early exercise, right? It's really, sometimes it's hard to tell because they are selling it as AI, even though it might or might not be, or it's using just a very, tiny component of it. So I think you need to go in with your eyes wide open and start asking questions like you did with our exercise before, to ask, like, is it AI? How is it AI? If you're comfortable asking, you also wanted to know like what data is being used, or how is it used, or where did you get this data from? So be as specific as you can about that. And I think, thirdly, you wanted to know if it's actually genuinely adding values. Does it solve a problem? I wouldn't want you to use AI for the sake of it's a shiny new technology. You have to present an actual business case to articulate, what results you're going to get with using this AI product. It takes a lot of data to get real value from AI applications. Like, were you able to source that in your organization? Are you able to get to that volume of data to make it work? And think about the opportunity cost too. Like, is it expensive investment? So think about like, what are the opportunity costs? Is this money better invested in other efforts? Like, is it better to actually invest in developing in-house capability or improving your learning design efforts rather than investing in a technology? It's everything has a cost and an opportunity cost. And finally, I would also encourage you to look at, like, if the AI companies own their own IP, their intellectual property, or is it based on an open source? There's pros and cons on both, but I think it is good to ask early on before you buy into your product and you get stuck later on not knowing how they own that. So so my key points is do your research, go in with lots of questions and keep a very open mind about it, and to know that, like, AI is not beyond and all. It has to be used for a specific purpose. So so that's my hope for you. And I hope this pretty much would get you interested in learning more about AI applications and how it applies to L&D. Feel free to connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm happy to reply your questions there as well. I know you asked a lot of thoughtful questions here, so some of that would take a little bit of time to think about it. And also feel free to email me, and I'm also on Twitter at Stella L.
Okay, so let's go to the wrap-up screen, if I may. And what I'll do is I'll copy useful resources across. Keith Quinn recommended a book. I don't know whether you know that book, Stella. It's called Designing Adaptive and Personalized Learning Environments. And I'm just going to post the link there. And also, I've reposted your questions that you asked at the last screen, if anyone wants those. They are these questions about what data is used, is it really AI, does it add value, what is the opportunity cost, and the final one is does the company own its IP? And I've also got your Twitter handle and your email address, and I'll post those as well because they may be quite helpful for people. So your Twitter is the first, and that should say Stella, that one there, not Stella, so I apologize. That's bad typing. So do you want to pick, we've got about 3 minutes, Stella. Are there any questions that you particularly want to pick up from the box? There is lots of questions there. Does facial recognition work when people are wearing masks? Yep. No. That's why people rob banks wearing masks.
By the way, did you, Nigel, do you mind also putting my
I'll get that up there as well,
information there? Yeah, because somebody asked for that. Let me just see. I think there's definitely, I would encourage you to read up on, there's a lot of books also about AI out there. I'm happy to share some resources as well. Perhaps I can put together a book list.
That would be really helpful, thank you. Okay? Yes. What is your LinkedIn name, Stella? Is it Stella Lee, just Stella Lee, or have I got it right?
You know what? I don't know.
I think it is too. I was on it today, but I think that's right. Let me check.
Yeah.
We shouldn't give bad information. Don will never forgive me, Stella. I'll be banished into outer darkness forever for giving bad information.
No, I'm just going back at some of the questions. Yeah. Are there not technologies addressing this by asking for feedback, e.g. Amazon Music makes me give a thumbs up and down? Yeah, yeah, it is true. Some recommendation systems and adaptive systems are attempting to do that. But it's still, I think the larger point is it's not consistently done. And also, it's, we shouldn't stop at just that, right? And not just a thumbs up and down, but like why did you like certain things, or why did you not like certain things? And it's much easier if it's just for entertainment, but for learning, it's much more complex than your own personal preference. So I think we should dig a little bit deeper into how do we generate learner feedback? How do you know if it actually helped with their learning? So
let's have some final. We're now at 1 minute to go. So if there's any final questions, I'll see if I can pick a humdinger for you from maybe back to where we were at the beginning that we missed. There's a question which I think we should pick up, and that was, does AI in learning kill curiosity by kind of programming people down a route and not allowing them to move fast or explore or do all the other things that we think are valuable? So what about that question? That's quite an interesting question.
Yeah, I think it depending on how you apply it, right? It's just like, with every technology, there are limitations and there are potentials that you can use. It's the same with when writing was invented. Does writing limit the way you memorize things? Because you can write things down now. You don't have to memorize anymore. So it doesn't mean your memory is going to decay. I think it's down to, no matter what technology you use, you have to think about your learning design methodology. You can design in a way that can encourage exploration and encourage trial and error. So instead of just pushing and adapting content without inviting you as a learner to help with that adaptation process, you can perhaps design a learning platform that actually invite you to adapt and explore together. I think that's a great answer. Yes.
Stella, I think we should draw this to a close, but I think the point that you're making overall that ran all through your presentation is that you've got to be smart. There are no magic bullets. There's no salesman's patter that is going to solve all your problems regardless of what you're told. Be curious yourself. Ask the right questions, probe, and find something that works for you as best you can. And there is no right answer. There's no definite AI will do this or it won't do that. It depends on how it's being used, in what circumstances, etc., etc. And that is good advice. We need to be more AI literate in order to make the best decisions and not rely on.
That's right.
And ask questions.
And to ask questions. No, sorry, I'm just to ask lots of questions, because AI, it's a very murky term. So please don't be afraid. Don't feel like people are going to think I'm stupid for not knowing it. So
yeah, thank you. And lots of people saying yes, a little book list would be fantastic if you could. So we'll post that. We can post that in the forum, but also we can post it on LinkedIn as well. So you will get 150 people now joining you on LinkedIn, following on LinkedIn in order to get the book list. So thank you. Someone said, David too said thought-provoking. I think full of interesting and clear messages for everybody. So Stella, I'm really delighted that you could join us. Thank you very much. And now it's the end of our day. It's a pleasure. It's 7:15 here, but you're just in your morning now. So you've got a day's work ahead of you. And we wish you the best of that. So thank you, everybody. We're going to close the session imminently, and I appreciate you all joining. So thank you so much for all the positive comments at the end. We've got lots of people saying very interesting, insightful, and excellent. So thank you so much. I'm going to end the meeting in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.